Good evening. My name is Alexis Folgaris, RTM moderator. As all members have received a copy of the call for tonight's evening, the reading of the call shall be omitted. This evening, I have asked Mr. Karsten Wagner, one of our newest members of the RTM, to lead us in the pledge. You may remember that in April, I invited Lucy Krasnor, one of our longest serving members at 45 years, to help lead us in the pledge. So I thought we'd go to the opposite end of the spectrum with Mr. Karsten Wagner, who has a whopping 5 meetings under his belt as of this meeting. And before he recites the pledge, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who he is. Karsten Wagner joined the RTM this past January, representing District 6. Representing District 3, so sorry. District 6 is my district. He's a member of the Finance Committee and an alternate for the Budget Overview Committee. He was born in Bogota, Colombia, and raised in New York. He moved to Greenwich 2 years ago with his husband and daughter and works in venture capital. Karsten joined the RTM because he believes in community service, finding common ground, and making sure that all residents of Greenwich are well represented in this body. Earlier this month, Karsten helped organize the Greenwich Pride at Town Hall, and he wishes you a happy Pride Month. And he was also one of the wonderful RTM members who marched in our little town party pre-parade. So with that, you are welcome to lead us in the pledge. Thank you very much, and welcome aboard. As all members have received a copy of the minutes from the May 2023 meeting, the reading of those minutes shall be omitted. Are there any proposed changes from our May meeting? Hearing none and absent objection, the May minutes stand adopted upon unanimous consent. We do have a couple of announcements. First of all, I would like to thank everybody who marched in the parade. We had very robust turnout. I'm hoping that next year we have even greater participation. And Stephen Rubin very kindly donated some hats for people to wear. And if you did not get a hat, you can come and see him. He's up front, and he does have extra hats for our marchers. And Bob McKnight, I would like to recognize you to make a couple of announcements.
Good evening. FYI, your appointments committee is seeking to fill vacancies in our labor contracts committee and the claims committee. These unfulfilled vacancies require a time-sensitive resolution to make our committees whole. Please contact myself or our secretary, Jude Collins, as soon as possible. All those interested. For our claims committee, practicing attorneys are preferable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I believe those will be taken up in the September meeting, correct? So you have all summer to prepare your CV and figure out if you'd like to join either claims or labor contracts. Just a quick reminder, your clickers have all been tested for batteries. If you haven't participated in the test vote, now's a good time to just check it and make sure you would see ABC, because the vote is not actually open right now. If you have, for our members who are participating online, I just want to remind you of the tech support number. It's 203-992-8383. If you have a problem during an open vote, during the meeting, you yourself need to get our attention, and if necessary, we will hold open the vote while we resolve that problem. And as has been our practice for the last 3 years, if you are participating remotely and you need to get the attention of somebody in the room to make a point of order or a point of information, you need to contact either your district chair or a colleague in your district. Do not call the tech support line for that, because that's not how it works, okay? Okay, that brings us to the call for this evening. I notified the membership that I would recommend the following organization of our agenda based on the reports received. Consent items 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Combined calendar for the purpose of postponing items 10 and 14, which leaves us to consider 4 items separately, items 2, 3, 19, and 20. Pursuant to our rules, I will designate items 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, and 18 to our consent calendar. And if those items remain on our consent calendar, all you will hear is what I'm about to say. We will not have any committee reports. Okay, so I'm going to start with that. Item 1 is the appointment of Bill Galvin to be a regular member of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses One Word Agency for a term expiring October 31st, 2026. Item 4 is the appointment of David Snyder to the Health and Human Services Committee for a term expiring June 30th, 2025. Item 5 is the appointment of Danielle Goodwin to be a member of the Board of Health for a term expiring June 30th, 2027. Item 6 is the appointment of Francis Kip Bergweger to be a member of the Commission on Aging for a term expiring June 30th, 2026. Item 7 is the appointment of Ellen Wolfson to be a member of the Commission on Aging for a term expiring June 30th, 2026. Item 8 is the appointment of Anne Marie Hines to be a member of the Commission on Aging for a term expiring June 30th, 2026. Item 9 is the appointment of Matthew Pop to be a member of the Board of Parks and Recreation for a term expiring June 30th, 2026. Item 11 is the appointment of Jason Halio to be a member of the Harbor Management Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2025. Item 12 is the appointment of Edward Keller to be a member of the Harbor Management Commission for a term expiring March 31st, 2025. Item 13 is the appointment of Christopher Logano to be a member of the Harbor Management Commission for a term expiring March 31st, 2026. Item 15 is the Community Development Block Grant for Program Year 2023 Annual Action Plan. Item 16 is the the Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act Tax Credit Program. Item 17 is an appropriation of $110,000 to go to cleaning services, maintenance, and building systems for the fire department. And the final item on our consent calendars, item 18, the appropriation of $920,000 to be appropriated to Nathaniel Witherell for professional fees. Okay. Is there any objection to any of those items on our consent calendar? Okay. Craig, could you please prepare the slide for the consent calendar items? Got it? Okay. You ready? He's going to switch it. Hang on. Let me know when it's ready. No. Okay, there you go. So if you're in favor of the consent calendar items, you would vote yes. If you're opposed to the consent calendar items, you would vote no. The voting window is now open. You'll have 2 minutes to vote. You have about 30 seconds left. If your intention is to vote on this item, you might just want to make sure that your square is grayed out or is blue if you voted, or if you're not voting, it would be gray. Craig, could you please close the vote? Okay, the vote on the consent calendar is 180 in favor, 0 opposed with 0 abstentions. So this item has carried, and there's your vote. Okay. That now brings us to our combined calendar items, which are going to be items 10 and 14. In order to combine items, we need to suspend the rules. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to combine for voting purposes items? Okay. It has been moved and seconded to combine for voting purposes items 10 and 14. The motion to suspend the rules is not debatable and does require a 2/3 majority to pass. We can adopt this upon unanimous consent if no one objects, but if someone objects, we'll take a record vote. Is there anyone that objects to suspending the rules to combine for voting purposes items 10 and 14? Okay, that motion has been adopted upon unanimous consent. Item number 10 is the nomination of Scott Johnson for the Parks and Recreation Board. Mr. McKnight, could you just read that resolution and then offer your motion, please?
Resolved, the following named person nominated by the Board of Selectmen be appointed a regular member of the Board of Parks and Recreation, R7, for a term expiring June 30th, 2026.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. The resolution has been moved and seconded and is now before us. Mr. McKnight, would you like to share your report with us or your proposal?
Yes, Scott Johnson was unable to attend our June 6th meeting, so at this time I'll make a motion to postpone this nominee to our September meeting.
Thank you. That motion being offered on behalf of a committee does not require a second. I don't know, I believe Parks and Recreation, is there anyone from Parks and Rec? I know Ms. LaBalbo's not here, but I believe they also agreed with the postponement. Does any debate on the motion to postpone? Okay. That now brings item 14 before us. Mr. Berg, are you reading that one?
I can.
Okay. And item 14 is Ann Alexander.
Item 14, resolved that the following named person nominated by the Board of Selectmen be appointed an alternate member of the Historic District Commission, A1, for a term expiring October 31, 2023.
May a member please move the adoption of that resolution? The resolution has been moved and seconded and is now before us. Mr. Berg, your committee, I believe, wants to postpone this as well.
Ms. Alexander was unable to attend our meeting last Monday, and the Land Use Committee moved to postpone this item until our September meeting.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any debate or any objection for that item? Okay. Now, item 10 and 14 are both being recommended for postponement. That's a procedural issue. We can adopt that upon unanimous consent, or if anyone objects, we could take a record vote. So at this moment, is there anyone that is objecting to postponing items 10 and 14 to the September meeting and taking them up there? Hearing none, the consent calendar items 10 and 14 have been approved by unanimous consent to be postponed until our September meeting. Okay, that now brings us to our separate calendar. We have 4 items on that calendar, and I believe, Mr. Kalb, you have something that you would like to offer. You can come to the podium. We're very formal here.
Yes, Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to limit debate to 2 minutes per speaker per item.
Per motion or per item? Usually it's per motion.
Okay, per motion, 2 minutes per speaker per motion, except for the main proponent and opponent, who shall have 5 minutes each.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Okay, a motion to limit debate is not itself debatable and does require a 2/3 majority to pass. Craig, could you please prepare the voting slide for that? So this is the Kalb motion to limit debate to 2 minutes per speaker per motion, with the principal proponent and the opponent, the latter to be determined by the moderator, to be given 5 minutes. Okay? That is the one. Yep, it does require 2/3 to pass. Craig, could you please open the voting window? Okay. If you are in favor of limiting debate, you would vote yes. If you are opposed to limiting debate, you would vote no. You have 2 minutes to cast your vote. You have about 30 seconds left. If your intention is to vote, now would be a good time to do so. Craig, could you please close the voting window? Okay, the vote on the Kalb motion to limit debate is 164 in favor, 19 opposed with 2 abstentions. That motion has carried. So for the balance of the meeting, speakers will be limited to 2 minutes each per motion, and then 5 minutes for the principal proponent and the opponent, the latter to be determined by the moderator. And one very important announcement, when you turn in your clickers this evening, and I know there's always a mad rush to do it, and I suffer from a panic attack when you all rush these things, throwing them at the counter while the vote is open. We've sort of tried to make it a little bit easier. Districts 1 through 6 will be returned over on this side where Lynn and Elaine are. And then districts 7 through 12 will be returned over to Kim's side over there. So if you could just, when you're ready to go this evening, just find your district. It'll make it a little easier, a little less jam-packed for everybody, okay? Okay. This brings us to the first of our items on the separate calendar. Item number 2 is the proposed fire marshal construction plan review ordinance. The item is currently before us. It was postponed or delayed from the April meeting. It was first brought forward there. May we have the reports from the committees that considered this item? Mr. Harris, are you going first? Brooks Harris of the Finance Committee.
Thank you. This was the second read for the proposed fire plan review fee. As is customary, the Finance Committee focuses particular attention to the financial impact of such proposals. In April, Fire Chief Joseph McHugh and Assistant Town Attorney Amina Ahmad had presented comparable fees charged by other nearby municipalities. This data indicated the appropriate fee for fire review was $5 per $1,000 of building cost. In our June meeting, Assistant Fire Chief Charles Lobowicki presented. He confirmed what Assistant Town Attorney and the Fire Chief had presented in April, that the proposed fee was consistent with precedent. He also described how much work the fire department had to do on some of the proposals and argued that while the fee would not go directly to the fire department, it would compensate the town for resources expended, which otherwise would be funded by residents' taxes. Assistant Chief was also asked about whether apportioning half of this fee to affordable housing would mean that the town would not be fairly compensated for the work to review fire plans. The Assistant Chief stated that he was not aware of any plan to divide or reduce this fee, but reiterated that based on precedent and the efforts of the fire department to review plans, $5 per $1,000 of construction cost was the right number, and a lesser number was not recommended. Members asked whether a version of the amendment proposed by Cheryl Moss in April would be made in our June meeting. I indicated that I did not know. Bob Barilak, chair of the Greenwich Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I had several discussions with Cheryl Moss. The trust is actively evaluating a potential developer fee specifically related to affordable housing. Such a proposal would be based on research, analysis, and public debate, and could be ready for the RTM review at our next meeting in September. We suggested it would be more productive to combine our efforts, but this was rejected. We were never informed whether an amendment would be offered and only found out about it after getting the minutes from LNR. As such, Finance was not able to opine on the financial appropriateness of any amendment. Item 2 was voted on as it appears on the call without amendment and passed 8-1-2 with 1 absent. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Newman, Chairman of our Town Services Committee.
Madam Moderator, members of the RTM and guests. Town Services met last week to again discuss the Fire Marshal's fee ordinance. We discussed the meeting between Legislative and Rules and the Town Attorney, which you will be hearing about shortly. We discussed and understand that an amended ordinance will be proposed by LNR to meet the possible changes in state law that can affect this ordinance. We had Assistant Chief Lubowicki with us. He was asked the history of the ordinance and what was the GFD trying to achieve. He pointed out that the fire department matrix study recommended the Greenwich Fire Department had opportunities to raise revenue to offset taxpayer costs, and this ordinance was an obvious first step. The GFD has no formal opinion on what the town does with the collected fees, but the intent was to offset GFD costs to taxpayers. Our committee discussion centered on the use of the funds and if it was appropriate to take proceeds from the Fire Marshal's ordinance and move them to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The Town Services Committee voting on this item changed since our first meeting in March, when we voted 12-0-0 on the original amendment. In April, we discussed the amendment to split off half of the fee and voted 9-2 in favor of funding the trust fund. As this has developed, last week we took the two votes. The first vote was on the original ordinance, keeping the full fee going to the general fund. And that vote on town services was 10-0-0 with District 2 and 3 absent. We also voted a second vote on the amended, or what we know to be the amended ordinance, with half of the fee going to the general fund and half going to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The vote on this amended item was 5-4-1, with again Districts 2 and 3 absent. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jansen of the Budget Overview Committee?
Good evening. Your Budget Overview Committee interest in taking up this item in the June 2nd read was due to the potential redirection of the new fire marshal inspection fees to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Unfortunately, the LNR amendment was not yet created and distributed to the RTM until after the BOC's June 1st meeting. Therefore, your BOC met again earlier tonight to address the LNR amendment, and later we will report our analysis and vote. The BOC discussed the backdrop for the fire department, identifying and creating the new inspection fee. It was noted the fiscal year 24 BET budget guidelines describe challenging economic conditions with high inflation and a record number of capital projects, and asked department heads to not only look for cost savings, but to also seek increased revenue opportunities in their operations. In response to the BET's guidance, Fire Chief McHugh, working with the First Selectman, identified an area in the Fire Marshal's office with new inspection fee that are widely charged in municipalities across the state after a Connecticut statute was enacted allowing the fees. The BOC then discussed the topic of affordable housing, which the committee believes is a serious and consequential issue for the town to address. There was a recap of important historical facts. When the trust fund was originally presented to the RTM in September 2021, BOC members recalled the P&Z Commission leadership repeatedly stating verbally and in writing that the fund, expected to be $2 million in the first year, would be supported only by private donations. P&Z leaders also said that even though some other towns continue implement surcharges on building permits or development fees, there would not be any in Greenwich. In fact, it was said explicitly, only after a few years when private donations did not occur would alternate funding be considered. The BOC also noted P&Z Commission had also applied and received from the BET in July 2022 $1.1 million in ARP federal COVID funds. The First Selectman and the BET prioritized funding the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as they evaluated over 87 different town and Board of Ed projects submitted by department heads. Consistent with the premise of raising the fund from private donations, the BET had a modest $450,000 condition in matching funds. To date, the Affordable Trust Fund has not spent any of the $1.1 million of COVID funds received. Your Budget Overview Committee then wrapped up the discussion on the positive impact the proposed fire marshal inspection fees will have on current and future budgets. The BOC vote was unanimous to support the new fire marshal fee ordinance with a 12-0-0 vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Kip Bergwecker, Chairman of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Good evening, Madam Moderator, members of the RTM, distinguished guests. Bill and I met on Monday night, June 5. We had Fire Chief Joseph McHugh and Planning and Zoning Commission Chair Margarita Olben assisting the committee. All districts were present, either in person or by telephone. I've been told by some RTM members that only recently have they begun to understand Eleanor's proposed amendment, so I spent a little time to review the amendment's history. The Town Services Committee at its regular April meeting had voted to offer an amendment to this item. The amendment required that half of funds collected by the fire marshal for review of project plans be paid to the Greenwich Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Prior to the RTM's meeting, the Assistant Town Attorney had opined that the committee's amendment was not in legal order, and the committee elected to not present the amendment. Cheryl Moss from the floor then offered an amendment to the Town Services Amendment to correct the legal order issue. The Assistant Town Attorney opined from the floor that the Moss Amendment was also not in legal order. Mr. Byrne appealed that opinion. The appeal carried. The Moss Amendment was referred back to the Law Department and Legislative and Rules Committee for a special meeting to report back to the RTM in this June 2023 meeting. The report on the special meeting was distributed to the RTM as a part of this meeting's materials. As stated in the report, Eleanor voted 10-1-0 that the Moss Amendment to have half of the review fees paid to the Affordable Trust Fund is in legal order, and that Eleanor would revise the Moss Amendment to reduce some ambiguities and offer that version at this June meeting. Jane Weisbecker, in consultation with the Town Law Department, revised the Moss Amendment, which was made available before tonight's meeting. And it was also, it was made available before Eleanor's meeting, so we were looking at the version that would be considered. At the meeting, Margarita Alban joined by phone to update the committee on a recent development at the state legislature that would prohibit the charging of permit fees on multifamily housing projects with affordable housing accommodations. Chief McHugh asked if the fee payable to the general fund would revert to $5 once the proposed Affordable Housing Trust development fee sunsets. It was determined that while the current language did not conform to that, there would be plenty of time to address it in the expected 5-year time frame for the proposed arrangement. The voting results, Mr. Byrne recommended that Eleanor take a position on the amendment. Therefore, the committee voted on a motion to amend item 2 by replacing it with the Eleanor amendment. The motion passed 9-3-0 with districts 1, 5, and 10 voting no. District 1 noted he did not think any funding should go to the Housing Trust Fund. Finally, the committee voted on a motion to delete the Affordable Housing Trust Fund development fee from item 2 as amended. The motion failed with districts 1, 5, and 10 voting yes. And the result is that the Eleanor amendment reduces the amount of the review fee that the fire marshal receives from $5 for every $1,000 of construction costs to $2.50 for every $1,000 of construction costs, and adds a fee payable to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund of $2.50 for every $1,000 of construction costs. The Eleanor amendment also exempts from the fee any project exempted by state law. The Eleanor amendment appears on the town's RTM's speaker's sign-up sheet. I will offer that amendment at the appropriate time, which, moderator, I suspect is now.
Thank you very much, and thanks for providing that rich historical background of your meeting and the motion. So yes, you are welcome to offer the Eleanor motion at this time.
I hereby move that we adopt the Eleanor motion.
That motion being offered on behalf of a committee does not require a second, and it's now before us. I believe we have a District 8 committee report on that motion as well. Mr. Bergweger, did you want to add anything else from Eleanor as a report on that? Okay. Okay, Cheryl Moss, Chairwoman of District 8. District 8 also took this up.
Good evening. District 8 heard the L&R Committee report by Chair Kip Bergweger that you just heard on the proposed amendment for item 2. After hearing his report, I suggested D8 show our support by taking a vote. This was seconded by Samuel Lazar Jacobs, even though only 13 of our district members were present. We discussed the amendment with most of the district speaking in favor. One member raised their objection to the amendment because this had never been done before. We should wait to see how much is brought in by these fees, and the Affordable Housing Trust was supposed to fund themselves through private donations. This was countered by other members, citing that not enough had been raised through private donations, and we needed to be doing something to move the needle forward to increase affordable housing, but in a way that gives the trust the means to continue their work negotiating with developers to reduce the scope of the more extreme proposals under 830G, as well as letting developers charge rent at the 80% of the town's median income rather than the 70% of the state's median income, which would disqualify our own teachers, firefighters, and police. We agreed that the town needs to create more housing for those who work in town, just like in the past when even lunch ladies could afford to live here. There was general agreement with one member who mentioned that affordable housing was needed to provide seniors on limited income a way to age in place, meaning staying here in Greenwich, whereas currently seniors looking to downsize are often forced to move out of town as they are priced out of the market. One member voiced concern at the way affordable housing is counted in Hartford because many units are currently not counted towards our goal of 10%. This was countered with the fact that we have been out of compliance since 1989, and we are long overdue in moving toward the 10% target. We need to do everything we can to indicate to Hartford that we are taking the mandate seriously and not just adding more fees that could be seen as a further impediment to multifamily housing. The vote was 12-1-0 in favor of the amendment.
Thank you very much. Okay. Ms. Jansen, you have the BOC report?
Good evening. Once again, the BOC met earlier this evening to discuss the new L&R amendment created by the committee that redirects half of the expected revenue to the general fund to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The BOC appreciates and shares the concern for affordable housing in Greenwich to maintain an attractive place to live for the full spectrum of residents, from young families to senior citizens. However, there were various comments made at tonight's meeting that expressed concern with this proposed amendment. It was first and foremost noted once again that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was to be funded by private donations, and that this was a departure from it. There was another member who felt that the funding should occur. However, it should not be through this mechanism of a fee that was supposed to be directed to the general fund and moved without openness and transparency to the Affordable Trust Fund. Another member said that 5% is a good number for affordable housing and rejects the notion from Hartford that it should be 10%. Another member noted that private schools are building housing units that Hartford does not account for, and that we should be working with our state legislators to get that corrected. And finally, there was a member who said that this completely circumvents the budget process and was opposed to having this mechanism to redirect the funds. The fire department and the first selectman should also be commended for rising to the BET directive and assisting their own department and the town's budget overall. The BOC vote was unanimous, 0-9-0, to reject the motion to redirect the funds District 4, 5, and 12 are absent. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to our speaker sheet for this item. And Ms. Moss, you are being recognized as the principal proponent. You'll have 5 minutes. Craig, could you, or Dan, could you set the speaker time sheet or time clock to 5 minutes, please?
Good evening again, Madam Moderator, members and of the RTM and guests. The validity of this amendment has been called into question. It was in legal order when it was first introduced in April, and now, thanks to Jane Weisbecker and Amina Ahmad, the language has been tightened up. The 3 questions asked of the Law Department were, are we, the RTM, authorized to adopt the Fire Marshal Review Fee? Do we, the RTM, have the authority to change that fee? And is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund ordinance in full effect, authorizing the RTM to adopt a development fee or surcharge within the Fire Marshal Review Fee ordinance? The answers to all 3 questions are yes. It is not setting a terrible precedent to exert the power given to the RTM in an already approved ordinance. There will always be a first time after an ordinance is adopted. Complaints about budgetary implications are a red herring. The money should not have been put in the budget before the RTM approved the ordinance. And clearly the expected funds did not positively impact the fire department's budget. The BET cut one of the fire trucks they requested to replace a very old truck that frequently breaks down. Any money that comes in from the Fire Marshal Review Fee will go into the general fund and vanish. Some have asked why we haven't heard from members of the trust speaking in favor of this proposed amendment. That is an excellent question. When the amendment proposal first came before Town Services in April, we were told by the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust about their difficulty in raising private donations and how this amendment, while not fully solving their funding difficulties, was an important step in the right direction and a great way to raise awareness of their accomplishments. So I ask, who silenced them? When the idea of this amendment first came to me, I spoke with many people involved with the Affordable Housing Trust, and we agreed on 2 main points. There needs to be a positive discussion in Greenwich on affordable housing, and the Affordable Housing Trust needs more funding to continue the good work it has already started. I think it's fair to say that discussion has begun, but unfortunately it seems not to be the positive one I had hoped for. The Greenwich Affordable Housing Trust Fund is the only tool in our toolbox that we can use to negotiate with developers looking to skirt local zoning regulations through 830G. But the fund is struggling to raise money. So far, only $34,000 has been raised from private donations. We need more capital to continue the good work that the trust has been doing on behalf of the town. So far, they have had successes with their limited resources. For example, the trust has used its funds to negotiate with developers that might otherwise take advantage of 830G by getting them to reduce the scope of an oversized project, and they've gotten developers to increase the number of affordable units in their proposals. In return, the developers are able to change the rent they charge from these affordable units so that our local employees will qualify. The Housing Trust needs this funding to continue to work with developers and protect the town from overdevelopment. We should all want the people who work here in town to be able to afford to live here. I'm talking about our firefighters, our police, teachers, and those working in town hall. We should want young professionals like our sons and daughters after they finish college to be able to afford to live here. We should want our seniors to be able to age in place. These are all possible when we invest in affordable housing. Like Fred, I grew up in town and remember when all these people lived, worked, and raised families here. It was a vibrant and diverse community where the people working in town were fully invested in Greenwich because they were our neighbors. In conclusion, is this the best solution to fully fund the Affordable Housing Trust? Probably not. Is it the only solution before us? Yes. Is it a step in the right direction? Absolutely yes. I ask all who want to protect our town from overdevelopment while moving the needle forward to increase affordable housing to vote yes on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Frederick Lee, to be followed by Stephen Meskers. Dan, can you put 2 minutes on the clock from now going forward? 2 minutes. You're all set.
Thank you, Madam Moderator and RTM. I am here to ask you to vote no on the amended call item 2 before us. First, I'd like to clarify that I am for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. In fact, I was one of the original RTM members on the special committee to create the Affordable Housing Fund in the summer of 2021. What I am against is, one, I believe a dangerous precedent will occur if we start diverting funds on already approved fees, some in potentially unrelated areas. Let me be clear, this is what this amendment call will do. Two, the fire department determined the building review fee based on what they believed it would cost to pay the services they provided. I will note that our finance committee supported this amount with their own analysis. The item before us will create a funding shortfall for them and our town, as our funds have already been allocated in the budget we just approved in May. I feel these funds for the fire department building review should wholly be going to the fire department to cover their expenses and for their equipment needs. Excuse me. We all know that they will require a replacement fire truck, and we just approved an appropriation to cover additional expenses. If we learned anything from last week, we need them to be well equipped. Third, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is working on an analysis to determine the correct cost to charge developers on their projects. They are expected to come before us with their own plans and analysis and what to charge developers. We should not preempt them. So I ask everyone to vote no on the amended call item 2. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Stephen Meskers, to be followed by Karen Fasliotis.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Stephen Meskers. You all know me. I've served in the House of Representatives for 5 years, and I've seen various housing proposals put forward by the state. I can't see any of them as being pleasing to me. We, your delegation, have sat in numerous meetings, and we've all weighed in on them in our caucus meetings and in direct conversations with leadership. The entire delegation, including our 3 Democratic representatives, voted against the bills as they came to the floor of the Assembly. We, your state representatives, are advocates for local control. I am concerned about our willingness to dedicate resources to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The trust fund we first established with federal funds was an initial step into influencing developers negotiating better outcomes to 830G applications, but it needs additional funds. When I go back up to Hartford, I will vote the will of my constituents on the housing issue and for local control. But our position is better argued and better defended with resources under town supervision and in conjunction with our Planning and Zoning Committee. We will begin to deal with affordable housing only with some level of support, and that means financial support from our town. It is the same argument I made in terms of rebuilding our schools. It's the same argument I made in terms of supporting Nathaniel Witherall, and the one I bring forward tonight to support affordable housing. We can't claim to care about our kids, to care about our seniors, and to care about affordable housing without some level of financial commitment. This fee is a small step in the right direction, and it helps. Simply put, it directs fees to our trust fund, and that helps to control local development and moderate any housing proposals that come our way. I am concerned about the optics of voting down any funding for a housing trust fund.
Thank you. Karen Fasliotis, to be followed by Scott Kalb. Dan, can you put 2 minutes on the clock, please?
Okay. Ready? I thank the proponents for this amendment. And I know how hard the L&R committee worked to compose what is before you tonight. And the Affordable Housing Trust has some laudable goals, but this amendment has many unanswered questions that should be answered and understood prior to being passed. And therefore, I ask you to vote no on this amendment. The amendment, as you know, proposes that the $5 per thousand fee that is to be collected be divided into two fees, $2.50 made payable to the town and $2.50 made payable to the Affordable Housing Trust. The premise is that the monies would not come into the town's general fund, but go directly to the trust. It sounds simple, but what has been missing from the discussion is how this proposal will be executed. Does the trust have a separate and distinct bank account in which the collected funds can be deposited? Who will be collecting the monies and who will be the record keeper of these funds? Who will be depositing the funds? If there is no separate bank account set up for the trust, where will the monies go? If to the town, what is the mechanism to distribute the funds? I could go on, but I think you get the point. This amendment has many unanswered questions, and I hope that you will not follow the lead of our legislators in Hartford by passing this amendment before these and other questions are rigorously answered and debated. Please vote no.
Thank you. Scott Kalb, to be followed by Phil Dodson.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good evening, fellow RTM colleagues. My name is Scott Kalb from D7, and I urge you to vote yes on item 2 as amended. The Greenwich Affordable Housing Trust Fund is a constructive path forward in the effort to create more affordable housing in our town. It's a critical tool for negotiating with developers to reduce the size of affordable housing projects and also allow for more moderate income housing for our local workforces. We need to do a better job supporting affordable housing in our town. And we also need to do a better job of supporting the Affordable Housing Trust, which is a structure, I will remind you, that we approved here in the RTM. This $2.50 fee is an easy way for us to do so. It represents a new fee in Greenwich, but one that is widely implemented and accepted by other municipalities in our state. And it provides fresh capital rather than a painful appropriation of existing funds to support this critical infrastructure need. Another point worth mentioning is that I think, in fact, I'm echoing what Ms. Moss mentioned, is that so far only $34,000 has been raised from private sources. The fund, our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, is underfunded. I'm sure that the trust fund leadership will come up with an effective strategy to raise more capital, but there's no question that the trust could use more funding. Let the RTM show good faith in providing some of that needed funding. Some have argued that putting this $2.50 fee toward the AHTF might discourage private capital from coming in, but I think that's a facetious argument. I'm going to just conclude by saying we shouldn't pass up this opportunity. I would look at this as an opportunity for us to provide some funding. It will not solve the whole problem. We need a big comprehensive strategy, but it does something. And this is an opportunity for us to actually show as a body that we support affordable housing in our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil Dodson, to be followed by Rachel Kahana.
Good evening. We've encouraged town departments to find ways to cut costs or raise fees to help offset rising costs for the town. The purpose of the fire marshal ordinance was to establish a fee which would go into the general fund. It's unfortunate that persons want to change the intended purpose and divert half the money to be raised into the Affordable Housing Trust. Putting a development fee into the ordinance and diverting the funds sets a bad precedent and will discourage town departments from finding ways to offset rising costs. At the April meeting, our town attorneys gave the opinion that the ordinance amendments were not in legal order. Now that the L&R committee has rewritten the ordinance and says it's in legal order, doesn't mean it's a good idea to approve this. LNR also did not vote on the merits of their ordinance, which is another vote they usually take. It's now up to the RTM to reject the amended ordinance, which has gone through so many changes. Some have already argued we have to do this to show Hartford we are doing something about affordable housing, when 34 Connecticut towns haven't even filed a required affordable housing plan. Appearances mean nothing when Hartford is determined and only interested in bypassing local zoning control. Proposed development fee will not cause Greenwich to reach a 10% affordable housing level, nor will we become eligible for a moratorium from this requirement. There's been no justification or explanation made as to what this development fee would actually accomplish. The Affordable Housing Trust was supposed to be funded from grants or private donations without town funding when it was established. Town funds should not be used to cover the trust fund's failure to conduct fundraising. Town Services voted 10-0-0 on the original ordinance as it appears in the call, which is the version we should all support. Town Services then took a divided 5-4-1
Time.
vote.
Thank you.
Vote no, please.
I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Dodson, did I hear you say that LNR did not vote on the merits of this
That was in the-
amended? And I understand, Kip Bergweger, could you confirm? My understanding was you voted 9-3-0 on the merits. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. So they did vote on the merits, and the merits were 9-3-0. So 9 in favor, 3 opposed with 0 abstentions.
I was
for this.
referring to the last minutes, I believe it was from the second meeting, that they said it was not on the table, the merits.
What is before us this evening is the LNR amendment,
Right, well, that's what I was
and
referring to.
they took a vote of 9-3-0.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Rachel Kahana? Is she here? Okay, we're going to pass with her then. Henry Orfis to be followed by Joan Takor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I rise to ask you tonight to support our first selectman and vote no on this amendment. 13 other towns in Fairfield County have passed.
Sorry, Mr.
similar-
Orfis, we just need the clock. I'm sorry.
Okay. 13 other towns have passed similar fire fees. None of them have chosen to dedicate any part of those fees to their affordable housing trusts or efforts. If this amendment is approved, this body and the BET will lose control over an unspecified amount, but likely a substantial amount of future revenues. This would set a very bad precedent, I think, for this body to undertake. If we wish to fund the Affordable Housing Trust, let's allocate a particular amount of money for a particular year that this body discusses, debates, and sets the amount of. Let's not give an unspecified amount that is going to tie our hands in the hands of the BET in future years. Finally, let me make a comment about the potential for future legislation in Hartford. As I understand it, the legislative session has ended. So any bill that would be introduced next January. We do not know what form the bill would take. It would have to pass various committees and public hearings and pass both houses of legislature and then be signed by the governor before it becomes law. Many bills are introduced that go nowhere every year. I understand that there's a bill introduced every year to repeal the state income tax, and that's still with us. So I think we should not modify our ordinances today based on potential speculative legislation that we really do not know what it's going to look like. We'll deal with that if in fact it comes to pass. So in closing, please join me in supporting our first selectman's request that we say no to this amendment, allow this fee to go into effect as designed. And then in the future, if we wish to put money into the Affordable Housing Trust, let's go ahead and debate the amount and vote at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan Takor. And then we'll circle back to Rachel Kahana. I understand she's on the phone. So Joan, we'll take you and then we'll go to Kahana and then and after the next person in the room is Jane Sprung, so.
Good evening, all. There's one thing I think we can all agree on, and that is we want to retain local control in Greenwich, especially when it comes to property development. How we get there is the issue. And here we have an opportunity to do something more than voice our support for affordable housing. By approving this amendment, we can signal to Hartford that we're serious about affordable housing. By putting money into this fund, we can also encourage further private donations. We're putting our money where our mouth is. Prospective donors will see that they have something they can get behind because the town is getting behind it. Just because this hasn't been done before is no reason not to do it now. Let's be first at something. This is a targeted and precise answer to an intractable problem, so far intractable. It's just the type of ordinance we should be looking at. It's far from overreach. To the detractors out there, I've seen no alternative solutions. So in short, this is an innovative, creative, and bold approach to a problem we've had for a number of years. Frankly, I wish I'd thought of it. I didn't, but I can support it, and I urge you to support it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now Rachel Kahana, if she's online, Jenny, can you find her? Okay. To be followed by Jane Sprung. You're welcome to speak, Ms. Kahana.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Kahana, and I'm the state representative for the 149th District in Hartford, representing parts of Greenwich and Stamford. My fellow legislators, Steve Meskers and Hector Arzano and I, just ended a difficult legislative session in Hartford, in which we fought to defeat one-size-fits-all legislative mandates for increased affordable housing. These state efforts will keep coming because Connecticut is facing a housing crisis. As your representatives, our ability to resist top-down housing mandates is severely weakened when we fail to show local progress on the housing front. Calls for local control ring hollow in Hartford, where they are seen as efforts to avoid increasing housing stock. Approving this source of funding shows Hartford that we are serious when we ask for local control of housing solutions. Legislators in Hartford watch what communities are doing locally. When Greenwich refuses to provide a stable source of funding to our Affordable Housing Trust, we send a message to Hartford that demands for local control are an excuse to do nothing. To date, Greenwich has not put any of its own money into our Affordable Housing Trust. About $680,000 in seed money came from federal ARPA pandemic funding, and the trust raised an additional $34,000 from private donations. If you vote yes to this amendment, you will provide the state delegation the tools to be able to resist wrong-headed housing mandates from Hartford. We cannot succeed in revising the 830G formula or pushing back on fair share housing while Greenwich fails to fund its own affordable housing trust. I urge you to vote yes on this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jane Sprung, to be followed by Jonathan Perlow.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jane Sprung. I am Chair of District 10 and a member of the BOC. I am speaking tonight against the proposed motion to divert public funds raised from the fire marshal fee from the town's general fund and given to the Affordable Housing Trust. While I support the mission and work of the Affordable Housing Trust and Greenwich's efforts to grow and count all of Greenwich's affordable housing towards the 10% goal, I cannot endorse redirecting public money from the fire marshal fee to the Affordable Housing Trust for three reasons. First, September 2021, when the Affordable Housing Trust was established, it was stated that the trust will be funded only by private donations. P&Z also stated that they may explore other funding options over the years if private funding is not viable. Well, we did put our money where our mouth is. In 2022, the BET authorized $1.1 million of ARPA money for the Affordable Housing Trust. I commend the members of the Affordable Housing Trust for their work, but as of yet, they have not completed any projects or requested any funds from the BET. And the Affordable Housing Trust has access to substantial funds. Once the Affordable Housing Trust successfully completes its first project, the floodgates will open for private donations. So the idea of now allocating an open-ended amount of money that was meant for the general fund, for the fire department and other town services, seems unreasonable to me. The fire marshal's office plays a vital role in safeguarding our lives and property. By diverting funds from this essential and other departments, we risk compromising the safety of our community. In addition, diverting public money from the general fund would set a concerning precedent leading to budget uncertainties, potentially higher taxes, and bypassing the BET's oversight. While I continue to support efforts to improve Greenwich's affordable housing stock.
Time, thank you.
This is simply the wrong
Jonathan
way to go
Perlow
about
to
it.
be followed by Nancy Burke. Jonathan Perlow to be followed by Nancy Burke.
Madam Moderator and fellow members of the RTM, I rise to ask you to vote yes on the amendment before us that would put half the plan review fee into the Affordable Housing Trust. I believe this town has a moral obligation to offer affordable housing. Sharing that view, the state's General Assembly made it a legal requirement. And decades ago, sensing inaction, they created an enforcement mechanism, 830G. The town has not met its moral or legal obligations. Elected leaders representing the town have said very clearly that they support and believe in providing affordable housing, the implication being that they support more than we currently have. Those officials from both sides of the aisle have also made it very clear that they don't want the state interfering in our decision-making regarding housing. Now is the opportunity to match words with action. There is no free, no purely market-based, nor private donation-only solution to address the affordable housing crisis. If there were, we wouldn't have a crisis. So as they say, let's put our money where our mouths are. The amendment offers a relatively simple, creative, and affordable way to add funds to the Affordable Housing Trust, which is central to its approach to encourage more affordable housing in Greenwich without giving up local control. The argument that it sets a bad precedent is not a good one, in my opinion. We as a legislative body should have the knowledge, expertise, and integrity to treat any proposal on its merits. It sets a bad precedent is an excuse to do nothing. Given there is an estimated shortage of some 90,000 affordable housing units in Connecticut, and more than half of Connecticut renters are cost burdened, doing nothing is not an option. Responding to concerns about where the funds would go or how they would be managed isn't supported by the facts. The trust already manages money. So please vote yes on Amendment 2 so that Greenwich becomes part of the solution, not the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Burke to be followed by Hector Arzano.
Yes, I'm Nancy Burke, and I'm from District 2 and a member of the BOC. Thank you. Madam Moderator and fellow RTM members, while I wholeheartedly endorse the proposal for the Greenwich Fire Department to charge a fee for their hard work on building inspections, I do not support this recent amendment to this ordinance that would funnel part of these funds into the affordable housing. Although it's legal, although it's needed, it's just not the right thing to do. Note that Section 2-134 exempts all municipal projects of the town of Greenwich and the Board of Ed from these fees, so the fire department does not get those fees. Additionally, the BET has budgeted $1.1 million of COVID funds for the affordable housing. I understand that those have not yet been tapped or requested. Therefore, I would delete Section 2-132A from the amendment, and I would urge you to vote no on this amendment and let our great firemen get back to putting out fires and saving lives. Thank you.
Hector Arzano to be followed by Duncan Burke.
Good evening, everyone, and Madam Moderator. I am Hector Arzano, a member of District 8 on the RTM and your state representative for the 154th District. And Greenwich, we have to do better. and I speak in support of the amendment to item 2 of today's agenda. Most of you, if not everyone, is aware of the passing of the Senate Bill 998 as amended. It is a much watered-down bill of what the leadership of the House and the Senate in Hartford expected. In the House, the amendment narrowly passed 76 to 70. In the Senate, for a wider manage. As you know, the Greenwich State delegation, the 4 of us, as Steve and Rachel mentioned, voted no. In my opinion, we gained time. The need for more affordable and workforce housing in the state, the nation, and Greenwich is a reality. We gain time to control our own destiny. And I will repeat what I said in different opportunities at the Greenwich Realtors Forum last year, at the RTM, in the occasion of the approval of the Affordable Housing Trust and the Affordable Housing Plan. Our town leadership needs to increase efforts to develop and plan for the affordable housing needs of Greenwich. We need, if we want to better address the needs of vulnerable population in our community, as the title of the summer that we passed says, we must acknowledge that we have to increase our efforts. 95% of the Greenwich community's housing we have today was built more than 30 years ago. What more I said?
Time. Thank you. Thanks. It's okay. Duncan Burke, to be followed by Kathy Steele.
Good evening, everyone. Duncan Burke from District 2. I was reading Fred Camillo's letter to all of us this morning, and I thought he was going to be here speaking tonight, but I very strongly support what Fred Camillo said very simply today, just to vote no on this amendment. And obviously, our affordable housing needs lots of focus, lots of attention. We probably should try to, work with the definition they give us to work with in terms of the 10% number and the all of the various housing that Greenwich has in various places. People talk about the tax exempt status of the housing that has involved a lot of the private schools and this and that. But in general, we all need to focus on the affordable housing. But I think in this very simple approach to funding the expense of inspections, it's well set up. It's a simple agenda, and I think we should definitely vote no and just go forward with this and get on with the affordable housing in a big way going forward. We still have plenty of time to work on it, and this should be a no vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Steele, who I believe is online. And Dan, can you get that 2-minute timer for somebody who's online as well? Otherwise, I'll use my phone.
Yes, hello. Are you able to hear me?
We can.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging me and letting me speak tonight. I'm with District 11, and I've been on the RTM for 3 terms now. And in my experience, it's been a bit of a frustrating time. I feel like often our body is very reactive. When it comes to budget, we are only able to cut. We are not able to raise. We are not reallocate. I feel like this motion, I applaud it because I think its ingenuity really shows that we have an ability to address an issue and find a creative solution to solve the problems in our town. This is a brand new revenue stream for us, and it puts money into a fund that is designed to serve a community need. There's been a lot of talk tonight about precedent setting. However, I think that Greenwich has not been a leader on the state's 830G requirements. Let's vote yes tonight on this motion and this amendment and allow Greenwich as a town and our RTM as a governing body to be a leader in finding new and innovative ways to fund affordable housing needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Dudakis, to be followed by Lucy Von Brockel.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, members of the town meeting. I urge you to vote against this amendment by legislative and rules. When I voted for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, I did so in part because we were told no town funds would be used. Instead, the trust would raise funds independently. Now, just a few short months later, we are asked dedicated town funds to this project, which will likely be for perpetuity. The proposed process is strange and cumbersome. We are demanding that people who need to avail themselves of fire marshal review services are also required to pay into a trust fund that is not overseen by the BET or our town financial leaders, so there is no town supervision. That is wrong. And I think it is so wrong, I wonder if it could open us up to some legal challenges. Now look, I know people want to get the trust fund funded, but this is not the way. The proper way is for those who are our proponents of this amendment to make a contribution directly to the Housing Trust Fund and encouraging their friends to do the same. But I know it's much easier to take that money from others. Outside contributions was always the plan for the Housing Trust Fund. We've been wrong not to charge these fees in the past, and our leaders are rightly trying to correct that now. So I urge you to defeat this amendment. Let's pass the fee as originally presented, and I particularly look forward to hearing to the principal opponent on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy Von Brockel, to be followed by Dan Ozismir.
Good evening. If our town truly wants local control over the development of affordable housing, we have to take action. We can't just pay lip service. Greenwich does not have enough leverage at the state level to amend affordable housing legislation. If you're paying any attention at all, you can see that the state is heading in the opposite direction, whether you like it or not. Under existing law, the only way for us to have any control over development until we achieve 10% affordability is to find creative solutions that allow housing development without having a grossly negative impact on our community. Keeping our heads in the sand and turning down any opportunities and ideas for funding affordable housing is actually abdicating our local control and leaving the town at the mercy of 830G. If you are an advocate for local control, you should support giving our Planning and Zoning Commission and state legislators leverage and negotiating power, funding the trust and actively implementing other solutions to help us increase affordable workforce housing is a critical component of local control. This amendment is a step in the right direction for Greenwich, and I hope you will join me in supporting it. I also want to address the fact that we were given a budget in May that included a new revenue stream that can't be implemented until we approve an ordinance tonight. It's an argument that has been made that rejecting this amendment would have some kind of negative impact on the budget, but frankly, we shouldn't be beholden to a process that kind of circumvented us. We really need to ignore that argument and listen to our consciences. We shouldn't be pressured like this. I'd also just like to point out that all revenue in the budget is an estimate. Sometimes we have unexpected windfalls, sometimes we come up short. In recent years, our revenue has comfortably exceeded what was budgeted. There's no reason to believe that there will be any negative impact on the budget resulting from this vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Ozismir, to be followed by Lindy Lillian, who's online, I believe.
Good evening. Thanks for all the discussion tonight. I would just like to really focus on 3 points. The first is about the town budget. The fact is that the revenues in this budget, based upon services provided by the fire department, are in the budget. That budget was approved by the first selectman, the BET, and also by the RTM by an overwhelming vote of around 200 to 10. So I don't believe anything has been circumvented. Ultimately, if this amendment does pass, it will mean that there will be higher taxes or fewer services. It's just a simple question of math. Ultimately, that is your right in judgment. The second point is about budget process. Some of the most important town services that we have are the school system, the fire department, the police department, public works, parks and rec. Every year, those departments come in front of the BET, the first selectman, and this body, and they request funds. And when they request funds, they demonstrate what they've done, they answer questions, and ultimately our bodies, which is the town budget process, review and approve those budgets. If you accept this amendment, you will have a new trust that has no track record, that will have funds approved for years. Could be $250,000 a year, it could be $400,000 a year, nobody knows. And they will use those funds as they choose. Our superintendent of schools, who's providing a service far more important, comes in front of all bodies and annually asks for a request. I urge you not to change such a process. Also, in terms of funding, we talk about leadership. The BET and the RTM have provided $1.1 million of funding, not
Time.
a penny.
Thank you.
Not a penny.
Lindy Lillian, who's online, to be followed by Chief McHugh.
Okay.
You may go, Ms. Lillian. Can we just get the timer? Thank you.
Thank you. Opponents are saying it's too early. The Affordable Housing Trust hasn't proven itself. This is a circular argument. We, the town and the RTM, have created a trust and a process, and we can't implement it without money. If it's a trust in name only with inadequate funding, developers are more likely to turn to 830G and Hartford. Those paying these fees are commercial developers. This is a perfect nexus between what the fee supports and who pays the fee. It gives the town a tool to help incentivize developers to set aside some units as affordable. The amendment shows good faith management of our local affordable housing process. It advances our case in Hartford for retaining local control, and it helps our reps in Hartford advance this cause. 3 of them spoke in support of it tonight. Our RTM created the Affordable Housing Trust to encourage private developers to avail themselves of our local process, not Hartford's process. I discount the argument that because other towns put their fire department fees, commercial plan review fees, all towards their general fund, it's therefore best practice. Maybe they'll follow our lead. We should be a leader, not a follower, when it comes to good governance. The argument that any fees are fair game, I think our constituents would appreciate that part of this fee paid by commercial developers is actually going towards a specific related purpose rather than the general fund. It shows increased transparency, not overreach. The trust already collects money and loans money. These are not unanswered questions. Many joined the RTM hoping to see creative solutions to issues facing downtown government.
Thank
This
you.
is one of those proposals.
Chief McHugh, to be followed by Jane Weisbecker, who's also online.
All right, good evening, everybody. How are you? I'm not here to debate what we do with the money. I'm here to talk about the ordinance. My department put a lot of time and effort into research in this ordinance. Like Ms. Jensen and Mr. Hazimir said, we're trying to find ways to generate money for the town. We are last in line with this ordinance. Every other town in Fairfield County has adopted this ordinance, but the town of Greenwich. I work closely with my administration did a lot of research, and we came up with a fee that we thought was the most appropriate, that didn't injure or hurt any of our proposed developers and stuff like that, but a fee that could be kind of modest, that we could still generate some money for this town. What worries me is the fact that with all this debate going on, is that we're going to forget about the ordinance itself. Again, as the chief of the fire department, I cannot tell you where to put the money, and that's not my purview to even discuss. But I am worried about this ordinance and not passing because of the muddied waters now that are becoming this ordinance. We presented this and started work with the first selectman's office and Amana on this. I didn't think it was gonna take this much. I didn't think I'd be speaking here on a night about this ordinance. I thought it was gonna be pretty much a slam dunk. But I just urge you all to remember, you know, our fire marshals and our firefighters work very hard for this town. And, you know, this is one way for us to kind of checks and balances for our work, you know what I mean? And, you know, hopefully you all can see that and realize that what a great fire department you have, you know, and hopefully this doesn't get forgotten when you guys go to vote. I can't tell you what to vote on the amendment, but the ordinance to us is very important to this department and to this town for that matter too. So I hope you guys can all remember that. So I thank you all for your time and thank you.
Thank you. Jane Weisbecker. Jane Weisbecker, who's online, to be followed by our final speaker, Fred Camillo.
Hi, I'm here. Good evening, guests and fellow members of the RTM. The amendment before you has been extensively vetted and determined to be in legal order by LNR and the town law department. I'm here speaking for myself and not LNR tonight, but I can tell you that the procedures that are in this ordinance as amended have been reviewed and modified based on comments from the town building and zoning departments, the law department, and ultimately LNR when it reviewed it the other night. Several weeks ago, I was involved in the process of reworking the language of Cheryl Moss's original amendment to this ordinance. During this process, the most concerning comment made to me in opposition to the amendment was that it is not the RTM's job to legislate new fees. In other words, the RTM should be cautioned to stay in its lane. I've served on the RTM for 17 years at this point, which I realize qualifies me as a mere newcomer to many. I've been around long enough to know, however, that the RTM doesn't take its responsibilities lightly, nor does it appreciate being told that its role as the town's legislative body is actually less than what the law allows. In fact, the Affordable Housing Trust Ordinance, Section 6-3274 to be exact, adopted by the RTM, explicitly grants the RTM the unilateral power to legislate development fees or surcharges to fund the fund. This doesn't mean that the Housing Trust Fund has abandoned private funding, only that the RTM can vote to approve sources of public funding for the fund to supplement the private funding. I'm sure no one needs to be reminded that this ordinance was carefully drafted, vetted, and debated ad nauseum in 2001. In establishing the trust, the RTM put its stamp of approval on the trust fund and the ordinance. I'm asking you to support the amendment to assist with public funding to supplement the private funding for the trust.
Time. Thank you. Fred Camillo is our final speaker. You'll be recognized as the opponent with 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, members of the RTM and guests. I speak to you tonight not only as the first selectman, but as the fire commissioner, the commissioner of a department that came to us over a year ago when they found out that we were the only town not collecting these fees. And a department that also did research that showed that all of these towns were putting the money into their general funds, and at least one so far is putting it into the general fund, dedicating it towards fire protection. I stand here also as a strong supporter of the trust fund, and I salute Cheryl for bringing this up, and I think the intent is right on. We're all looking for the same thing here, so that should not be discouraged, and I thank her for that. But I think this sets a terrible precedent, a bad precedent because it takes public money and gives it to private developers. A bad precedent because it circumvents the BET, which is charged with managing the financial affairs of this town, and a bad precedent because it's going to create budget uncertainties in years to come. We've heard the trust fund mentioned before, and I met with 3 members on Friday, and there's some great and exciting things we discussed going forward that we think can work. We're not sure, but we're going to work damn hard on making that happen. And we know that the Greenwich, we've heard about how Greenwich is lagging. Well, Greenwich is doing pretty good. We were at 5.3% a year ago. We're at 5.8% of that 10% now. And when the Greenwich Communities is done rehabbing the ones we have on tap in the next 2 years, we hope 2 to 3 years that will be up at 6.7% with more planned after that. So again, I want to express my strong support for the Housing Trust Fund, but this should not be mixed. This would really create chaos going forward. I ask you all tonight to respect the original intent of this proposal and deposit all of this money into the general fund and allow our fire department, which puts in a lot of time on these fees, to recoup their operating costs. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the speaker list for those who have signed up on the LNR amendment for item 2. So Craig, could you please prepare that vote? It'll say like LNR motion to amend item 2, I think. Okay. LNR motion to amend the fire marshal ordinance fee. If you are in favor of the LNR motion to amend, you would be voting yes. If you were opposed, you would be voting no. Craig, could you please start the clock or open up the vote? Is it open? There we go. There we go. You have 30 seconds. If your intention is to vote, this would be a good time to do it.
People who are voting remotely are saying they're not seeing the vote after it's taken when they're remote. Is there any way you guys can make sure that it's up there?
The last vote, Alexis never said share the vote, so I never shared it.
Okay.
But normally,
People have been.
Craig, could you please close the vote?
when you see it here, they
Sorry.
see the same thing we see.
Okay, the vote on the LNR motion to amend, those in favor 75, opposed 117, abstaining 7, that motion has failed. So now we will go, there is a speaker list for general debate on item number 2. Oh, I'm sorry. Could have asked nicely. Okay. So now we do have a general speaker list for item number 2, which is just as it appears on the call at this point. Stephen Meskers should be followed by Margarita Albin, who I believe is on the line. Mr. Meskers, are you passing? Okay. Is Miss Albin on the line? Oh, Margarita. Sorry. Miss Albin would get 2 minutes to speak.
And hopefully I practiced it enough. Good evening, Madam Moderator, RTM members and guests. From a personal perspective, I would like to support our fire department's proposal to charge for building permit review, for reviewing the plans. I believe we should have their backs as they have ours every single day. But I can't reconcile my personal perspective with state law. In 2021, a state law was enacted prohibiting any municipality from adopting higher fees for either 830G affordable housing developments or for any multifamily residential building of 4+ units. That state law is in the zoning statutes. However, it references municipal fees in general, not zoning fees. The impetus was to prevent additional financial burden on multifamily housing versus single family. Then, just last week, the state legislature passed a bill which prohibits municipalities from charging any building permit fees for affordable housing whatsoever. You might think that this proposed fee is not a building permit fee, but fire sign-off is intrinsic to the building permit approval. It can't happen otherwise. The proposed fees could plausibly be considered legal. The bigger issue for you to consider is that of intent. These laws were passed because there is a belief at the state level that towns fight greater inclusion by making it costlier to build multifamily housing.
Okay. Scott Kalb to be followed by Kathy Steele. Passing. Is Kathy Steele, thank you, Ms. Albin. Is Kathy Steele online? Did she want to say anything?
Thank you. I would only reiterate my earlier comments that I would like to see the RTM pass this and become innovators rather than just not innovators. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So that concludes our speaker list for item number 2. Craig, could you please prepare the vote? Okay, if you are in favor of the fire marshal fee ordinance, you would vote yes. If you are opposed, you would vote no. Craig, could you please start the clock? Okay, you have 2 minutes. Okay, good, thank you. Okay, you have 30 seconds to cast your vote if your intention is to vote now.
There, voted. Voted.
Craig, could you please close the vote?
Close.
Okay. The vote on item 2, 175 in favor, 13 opposed with 5 abstentions. That item has carried. Craig, could you please show the vote? Okay. That now brings us to the second of our separate items, item number 3, which is a voting procedure submitted via petition by 20 registered voters. This item is already before us as a second read, so may we have the report from the committee that considered this item, which I believe is L&R.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Eleanor had Michael Spilo, the item 3 proponent, and Jenny Larkin, town IT consultant, to help us. Michael Spilo spoke as proponent of the resolution, reminding the committee that the signatories of the petition believe that the change proposed is considered standard procedure in other legislatures, acknowledged and recommended by Meridia, and that it provides accountability and security. Although this is the second read for this item, a lively and lengthy discussion ensued that retraced a number of topics previously discussed, specifically around whether the vote should be open or closed, and whether there should be time allowed for verification. A number of individuals spoke of the potential for politicking during the vote if votes were disclosed and the time prior to the vote being called was extended. Various members and guests noted that the voting process had improved since the introduction of electronic voting in December, with many successful votes completed in a timely fashion. Although considerable accommodations have been made to ensure that no one was disenfranchised. Others demurred and suggested there was still significant inefficiency, which might raise concern about the legitimacy of the vote. Jenny Larkin noted that there is a need for RTM members to take responsibility to learn the system to get help where needed and to check their votes. She also made the observation that while caucusing may have existed prior to the move to electronic voting, it was primarily within each district where the constituents' full open voting would not be so limited. Some members noted that changes had been made to voting over the years to regulate practice. Tom Byrne of District 6 observed that electronic voting was primarily introduced to relieve the district tabulators of considerable burden and referred to the current proposal as a de facto return to that practice. There was significant time spent on whether a change was needed to specify the time allowed for actual voting, separate from the resolution under discussion. Whether or not to allow additional time for verification with votes showing, or to include the verification time within the voting time allowed by the moderator was also hotly debated. Mr. Spilo confirmed that while Meridia recommends visual verification, they do not recommend a time frame for such. Whether or not such extra time would allow for increased caucusing was discussed. The committee also reconsidered whether or not item 3 is in legal order, with references to historical practice, Robert's rules, and the nature of balloting, but it was ultimately determined to be in compliance with relevant laws. The voting. After more than an hour of discussion, the vote was held. The item passed 12-0-0 on legal order, on contrast to the previous vote in April. The item failed on the merits 3-9-0, with districts 1, 5, and 6 voting yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, we do have a speaker sign-up sheet for this item. Mr. Spilo, it appears that you are going first as the proponent. You'll have 5 minutes, Dan. Up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. They say that if you like sausage and the law, you shouldn't watch either being made. But that's because it takes effort and time to make complicated things correctly. In April, I pointed out the old joke that counting the vote in Russia takes no time at all because they know the outcome weeks in advance. We should take time. But there's another old joke. What is it called when you keep doing the same thing over and over, but expect different results? It's called voting. We do it a lot. Each vote is unique, and it's important to get it right. This petition is about improving the security, accuracy, and transparency of our electronic voting system. It's about best practices. Change is required, but what is constant is the diligence and commitment of RTM members. To label us a herd is insulting and unnecessary. Here are the facts which remain true. Meridia is a manufacturer of the electronic voting system. As confirmed by Meridia, the OK on the clicker is not verification that your vote was recorded as shown on the clicker. They know this because they designed the system. I sent the email around where they confirm it. The petition does not allow the vote to change after the voting window is closed. Let me say that again. No votes can be changed once the tally is announced, as in accordance with Robert's rules and our own rules. This petition allows 3 minutes to verify the vote, but it says at least, and the moderator can extend this if necessary. We chose 3 minutes because the screens are still difficult to read, and some need help to see the screen and verify their vote. If the situation improves, we can reduce this. Showing the votes live while the clicker voting is in progress reduces the likelihood and the need to change the vote after the clickers are disabled. Visual vote confirmation is a standard practice, as you heard, for elected bodies, and it is in use by the Connecticut legislature, the New Hampshire legislature, and the New York and the US Congress, and the New York legislature. Most importantly, this change implements best practices recommended by Meridia. Meridia recommended live voting for Greenwich by email, and I've sent everyone copies of these emails. Meridia also recommends visual vote confirmation extensively on their website. These are facts. Any notion that something would be made worse as a result of having transparent vote is at best supposition, and these concerns should be secondary to an accurate and transparent vote. On the other hand, the fact that the clickers are not the final collaboration of the vote is a fact. Based on these facts, I ask you to support the petition to ensure a secure and accurate vote. Let's try it. And if it seems we are heard, or if you feel whipped, we can always go back to hiding things. To quote directly from Meridia's website, they say, when it comes to group voting in a professional setting, having the proper security measures in place is of utmost importance to ensure a smooth experience and accurate results. It is unacceptable to have a voting session interrupted, or worse, find out that the results of a vote have been affected by an unknown source in any way. They go on to say, quote, say hello to visual vote confirmation, the most effective way to ensure that the outcome of a vote hasn't been affected by unconfirmed data. Put simply, visual vote confirmation allows each individual to see their vote on a display in real time, allowing them to quickly confirm that the results on the screen match their clicker input. To quote Meridia's COO's email, he said, my suggestion to the town was that we would use a display that shows a green for yes, red for no, and yellow for abstain in real time, not just at the end when the vote was closed. Let's take all the time we need to make good sausage. Let's use a system as recommended by the manufacturer. Other concerns are secondary at best. Please vote no. Please vote yes for this amendment. Please vote yes for this petition. Thanks for your consideration and for your vote, however you vote.
Thank you. Richard Montier, to be followed by Kimberly Blank. Uh, 2 minutes, please.
Good evening. There are many reasons to defeat item 3. However, right now, I'm going to focus on just one, RTM culture, meaning the assemblage of behaviors, beliefs, rituals, and values by which this body operates. In recent years, our manual item votes at RTM meetings were as private as practical until a vote was submitted. Whether we marked our vote on a card or a check sheet, at the time of voting, others had little opportunity to know our personal decisions. Did this mean that there was no lobbying or debate about resolution merits before a vote? Of course not. Proponents pressed their opinions at committee meetings, district meetings, private conversations, caucuses, online submittals, and as now, addresses to the full RTM. These activities generally remained within long-standing RTM boundaries, reflecting a hope to maintain civility and minimize the intrusion of party politics. Currently, we are 5 to 6 months past the adoption of electronic voting, a major and perhaps underappreciated change to which we are still adapting. However, in many ways, we simply automated established practices, the equivalent of paving paths in a park where strollers have worn out the grass. Now, to air quote, correct an unproven system issue, we are asked to consider instituting a 3-minute minimum vote verification period. This is a dramatic procedural change that makes a mountain out of the molehill of user errors that have always been possible. RTM voters could always have unintentionally checked the wrong box. Furthermore, it's been stated that herd mentality will be a non-issue.
Time. Thank you.
Please vote no.
Kimberly Blank, to be followed by Scott Kalb.
I'm in favor of this item. It just seems like common sense that we should be able to verify our votes before they are counted. The most important thing about any of our votes is that they reflect the actual will of the body, and this is in jeopardy if we can't verify our votes. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to see ways in which the current system can lead to wrong votes. You can be holding your clicker and seeing you push to 1 and then accidentally hit it again with a 2 and hit a 2 or a 3 before the voting window closes and not notice. With new technology, it's hard to anticipate all of the ways things can go wrong. If they could foresee them, they would fix them. I am going to vote for this, even though I think it's imperfect and probably overkill. This proposal has 2 separate types of confirmation. The first is open voting, where we can see how we voted before our vote is counted. The second is vote verification, to make sure our vote was recorded correctly. Under the old clipboard system, we only had the first type of confirmation, where we could see what box we checked, and then we trusted the tabulators to do their jobs. And I think open voting is still all we really need. Some people object to open voting because they think it could lead to lobbying or a herd mentality. I disagree. Unlike in elections, we have no concept of secret ballot in the RTM. All of our votes have always been public, whether they are the out loud roll call votes we have in our committees or the passed around clipboards. Our votes are posted online. We are all elected to make decisions in the best interest of our constituents. It's insulting to think that people think we could be so easily swayed from voting our own conscience. I'm voting for this tonight, even though I think it isn't perfect, because if we vote it down, we're left with nothing. This is a common sense, important issue, and there is no RTM group assigned to take it up. If we vote it down, I think everyone's fatigue on this issue will let it just sit there as a problem that no one is dealing with, and we may have more divisive situations where people don't have faith in our system. I am a big fan of the new electronic voting system, but it does need some tweaks.
Time.
And I think this is a fine starting point.
Now we have Scott Kalb to be followed by Michael Spilo, who'll be speaking as an individual. His previous speech was as the representative of the proponents.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Scott Kalb from D7, and I urge you to vote no on item 3. Let me address my specific objections. First, our current system of electronic voting does provide for voter confirmation, and to say that it doesn't is simply not true. Meridia recommends voter confirmation of either a closed or an open system. We use a closed voting system, as we always have. And when we vote electronically, we can see if our votes were recorded or not, as you have seen, as the space next to our names will turn blue, indicating that our vote is safely in the system. This is confirmation, and it is in line with the highest standards recommended by Meridia. Second, there's absolutely no evidence of any technical glitches, votes that were recorded wrongly, or votes that were miscounted in our system. It's absurd to suggest changes to our voting confirmation procedure to protect against system errors that do not exist. Third, showing how people are voting in real time really could lead to abuse. Individual members could feel pressured to vote in a certain way while the voting remains open, and despite protests to the contrary, we should not risk any kind of heightened partisanship or potential hurting. Finally, providing a window for RTM members to change their votes after the fact is unworkable and unthinkable. Imagine what would happen if a member could change their vote after casting it based on a quick assessment of how their colleagues have already voted, or worse, if they are pressured to change it. This is the third time that a group of disaffected colleagues, unhappy with the outcome of our RTM votes, has tried to change our system. They have unhesitatingly spread misinformation to undermine the integrity of our democratic voting process. This has to stop. Let's send them a message tonight that we are tired of these efforts that are mounted to keep changing our rules. Our voting system works just fine. Please leave it alone.
Thank you.
Please vote no.
Michael Spilo as an individual to be followed by Lucy Von Brockel.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the item.
Well, what is,
Can I do that now?
Sure. What is your motion to amend?
To amend the 3 minutes to 90 seconds.
Okay. So is there a second to that? Okay. Debate on the motion.
3. The 3 to 90 seconds. 2
So-
is the voting, 3 is the vote verification.
Okay.
It was a total of 5.
Okay.
So we're making it a
let's-
total of 3.5.
Just a minute. So if you look in item, it's part 4B, item 4, to provide for electronic voting, I believe what you would like to amend is, at the completion of the voting period, the moderator shall announce the start, quote, a vote verification period of not less than 3 minutes. You would like that, I believe, to say, at the completion of the voting period, the moderator shall announce the start of a vote verification period of not less than 90 seconds?
Correct.
Or a maximum of 90 seconds?
Not less than 90 seconds.
Okay. Okay.
It's the same language. Instead of
He's
3 minutes,
changing
it's
the
90
voter
seconds.
verification period from a 3-minute window to a 90-second window. So yes, Mr. Meskers has a point of information, and then Mr. Dudakis.
I'm just trying to understand the amendment. Not less than 30 minutes. Could be
30
3 minutes, means 5 hours. Not less than 90 seconds, could be 10 hours. I don't understand what we're doing here.
Right. So I think the question is, what is your upper limit? Not, so are you recommending?
The upper limit is up to the moderator, Madam Moderator.
Okay.
That's how it is now.
Wait. Okay. So you're saying that there needs to be a minimum of 90-second voter verification period. In your previous amendment, it was a minimum of 3 minutes. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. So he is suggesting that the minimum window to voter verify is 90 seconds to go up to whatever is appropriate.
As determined by the moderator.
Okay. Just 1 minute. Mr. Dudakis, you had a question.
I just want to clarify sort of the same thing as Mr. Meskers, so that it would be a minimum of 90 seconds, if I understand the speaker correctly, but then it can only be extended in the event the moderator says they want to extend it, which one would assume would be because there's some problems with the voting. Am I getting that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Von Brockel, you had a, okay. So I believe there was a second. So who's that? Mr. Brown, Mr. Scott Kalb, yes. Correct. Why don't you come to the podium, just so everyone can hear you online? It's hard for them to hear the question online.
Point of information, or really question.
Yeah.
We already discussed this as it appears in our committees
Right.
and in our districts, and we voted on it as it is. So now we have a new amendment. I'm not sure how that would position us, or if we would have
So
voted
there's nothing
differently.
prohibiting somebody from offering a motion from the floor. You are correct that it doesn't have the benefit of deliberative debate at the committee level, but there's no prohibition. Okay, so that motion has a second. We are going to take a vote on the Spilo motion to amend the vote verification period. There is nothing in there, Craig, so you're going to have to use your typing skills to create it. So motion to amend vote verification period. Huh? You don't have enough space to write that?
Just make it.
We're limited by characters, so we use shorthand.
Motion to amend petition.
No, Mr. Spilo, I will tell him
Sorry.
what to do. You do not get to dictate how the motion to amend is going to be written. So motion to amend voter verification period, and I would just put in parentheses like 90 seconds.
discuss it in the meantime?
No, that would just be a simple, we're just prepping the slide right now. So there is debate. Is there debate on Mr. Spilo's motion to, would anyone like to comment on, wait, just a minute. I think if you would like to debate that, why don't you come to the front? I can't see. I think it's Jonathan Perlow first, and then I'll recognize Ed Dudakis. I'm sorry.
Don't I get to speak first as proponent? Listen, I'll be really quick. I think that we need time to see how we voted, and that's you know, a minimum amount of time is responsive to the previous speaker who thought that 3 minutes per item is too long. So this is responsive. I think some people need a minimum amount of time to just look at the screen. Some people need to get up and go there because their eyesight, like mine, is not very good.
Okay. So, Mr. Perlow, you have the floor. You have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'll make this quick. I would ask you to vote no on this amendment. The proposal before us was submitted by Mr. Spilo, and he's had lots of discussions with lots of people, and now he's coming back and changing his own proposal, and I think that is not respectful to the time of this body. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dudakis.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, members of the town meeting. I think this is a wonderful compromise. I thank Mr. Spilo for being so open-minded about this. I do not fear transparency. I don't think there's any reason to fear transparency. The fact that this did not come before a committee is not necessarily relevant. The legislative and rules amendment we just talked about in item 2 never went before the committees either. So I strongly urge you to support this entire thing. And let's just, and I would like to just say about one other thing. Do I have time? Yeah. You know, there has been questions about the vote. We know we had a huge issue about whether the votes were counted properly. And it only is common sense to have our votes listed up there. If you followed the legislature, what Mr. Meskers, Mr. Arsenault do up in Hartford, they know immediately how everybody votes. We don't want to do it that way. I don't know why, but this is the best backup we can have. So please support this.
Ms. Nicastro, do you have something to say?
I just want to mention that it was my suggestion of the 90 seconds, and I had gone to Mike with the idea of a motion. So it wasn't Mike changing his mind. It was my suggestion, but I wasn't quick enough on the uptake to get up in time. Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to discuss this motion before we, Ms. Fahey, do you have something to say? You have to come to the podium, please. Still come to the podium because our audience members can't hear us online.
I just think there's some confusion. We should clear up before we vote. I think the question that is going around is, sorry. I really, just speak up. I think there's some, this one's better? Sorry, you're right, it's better. So I think there's a question that's going around that we need to clarify for the body before we vote. So this proposal, amended or not, for time, instead of having 2 minutes of voting where you can't see where you vote and then 90 seconds of verification, would have the vote completely open the whole 3.5 minutes. And I just think we need to confirm that's what we're voting on.
Right now, you're voting on reducing the vote verification window from 3 minutes to 90 seconds. But that's not the motion right now. The motion is, are you reducing the window from 3 minutes to 90 seconds? Okay, is that it for debate on this motion? Are we ready to vote on it? Okay. Craig, let's see what you have for the the motion up there? Okay. The Spilo motion to amend the voter verification period to 90 seconds. If you are in favor, the current resolution has it at 3 minutes. If you are in favor of reducing it to 90 seconds, you would vote yes. If you are opposed, you would vote no. You're only voting on changing that one aspect of this motion right now. You can open it. You may cast your vote. The vote window is open.
People to change their vote. Anyway, there's no action.
You have 30 seconds remaining. Now's a good time to cast your vote if you haven't already done so. Craig, could you please close the vote? Okay, the vote on the motion to reduce the voter verification window from 3 minutes to 90 seconds. Those in favor, 106, opposed 74, abstaining 8. So that motion to amend has carried. So moving forward, oh, I'm sorry, could you, there you go. Okay, we're going to march on with our speaker sign-up sheet. Lucy Von Brockel is next.
All right, join me in a journey back in time. So in March of 2020, the RTM leadership scrambled to find a way to allow us to meet remotely. Our leadership had a solution implemented with training and practice meetings in time to have a regular meeting that April. It was a tough transition for a lot of us. Few of us had heard of Zoom, fewer had used it. Zoom wasn't really set up for government meetings. It was kind of a mess. We had some hiccups, but we persevered and we adapted. At that first remote meeting in April 2020, we voted on the one and only change to our rules associated with the new process. We restricted the voting window to 5 minutes, after which time the tabulator had to turn over their district voting card, quote, even if all of the votes of members present had not been received, end quote. That was the extent of it, despite the process being complicated, vulnerable to human error, dependent on an array of personal devices, Wi-Fi networks, operating systems, and phone carriers. That rule was intended to keep the meeting moving and make members personally responsible for getting their vote in on time, rather than burden the tabulators with chasing votes from people who had fallen asleep. The changes proposed tonight have the reverse effect. They will slow down meetings and make it easier for members to avoid taking personal responsibility by letting them change their vote for any reason, whether they believe the system failed, whether they clicked the wrong button, or whether they simply changed their mind. We need flexibility to make adjustments to the process in response to changes in technology and equipment or other unpredictable circumstances that might crop up. Excuse me. Having to take up rules changes for 2 reads for making small adjustments like this isn't practical. The specificity of these proposed changes is also a problem, as they are more likely to become obsolete or unenforceable pretty quickly. I don't believe we need to update our rules to make improvements to the voting process on an as-needed basis, but if you do, I encourage you to hold off on setting changes in stone at this moment while we take some additional time to adapt to the new process, which we seem to be doing quite well if tonight's any evidence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our final 2 speakers are Kathy Steele, who I believe is online, to be followed by David Snyder, who's wrapping it up for us.
Hi, this is Kathy Steele. District 11, I would urge you to vote no on this amendment, on this motion, even as amended. Since we had introduced our online voting or our technology voting, things have gone much more smoothly. The process has sped up, and this will merely slow things down again. Everything really is working smoothly now with our current process. I've participated remotely and in person. It's faster every time, and let's not add 3.5 minutes to each vote. You know, the moderator and moderator pro tem worked very hard with our provider to implement a new system, and the kinks have been ironed out sufficiently at this point. There's really only been 1 contested vote. Unfortunately, it was on a very contentious issue, which has left a lot of people feeling uncomfortable. However, I think the reaction to that has been outsized to the issue. I think my other objection to this is process focused. If change is needed, I would rather see an RTM committee formed, an internal RTM committee formed, perhaps a resurrection of the technology committee to address, assess, and recommend a best practice for us. I think that would require involvement from the moderator, Meridia, and district tabulators, all of the people who are directly involved in the mechanics of casting and counting votes. Thank you.
Thank you. David Snyder is our final speaker on this item.
I've been my name is David Snyder. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I've been informed since this is the first time I've risen and spoke that District 6 is taking me out for a drink at some point. That was from Colleen Jenkins. I want to speak against this motion. I don't know if you all have memories of the hand tabulation days, but in our last 3 meetings, especially the May budget meeting, they have been extraordinarily short and efficient. And that is in large part because we have a blazingly fast, accurate voting system. The vote verification amendment is a complication that we don't need. We have never been better served by a technology as we are by this system. Forcing this extra step into the process will not give us assurances that all is right in our world. People will begin to question their votes and ultimately start to distrust the system that has repeatedly demonstrated that it deserves our trust. Our voting system has brought us extraordinary efficiency. Coming out of those endless COVID votes and hand counts has been a huge blessing. I urge you to reject this amendment and vote no.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our speaker list for item 3. So we now have a vote on item 3 as amended. I don't think we put in as amended on that vote, but it would be item 3 as amended. Yeah, you can, what do you have to delete?
Section 3, part 1.
Yeah. Item, yeah, you can type in item 3 as amended. Okay, So while Craig's typing, I'll just read it. So if you are in favor of a motion, that would effectively make our voting open, so you would see the votes in live time, followed by a 90-second minimum of a 90-second voter verification window. You would vote yes. If you are opposed to that and you would like to retain the method we currently have, you would vote no. Does everyone understand? Okay. So Craig, once you have your slide ready. Okay. So changing the RTM rules for electronic voting is amended. Okay. Craig, can you start the clock, please? Okay, the window's now open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Just look above her. One that's not voted. Right above.
You have about 30 seconds before the window will close. Craig, could you please close the voting window?
You weren't registering at all. What? You weren't registering. You weren't voting. They were calling you. Did you hear?
I know, but I have
Wasn't
voted.
go- You did?
Oh.
No, I'm saying it wasn't, it didn't come. Your name was not, it was not changing. Let me see, did.
Okay, the vote on item number 3 as amended. Those in favor, 74. Opposed, 113, abstaining 5. That motion has failed. If you could show the vote, please. Okay. Now, that brings us to item number 19, which is a substitute resolution that's going to be offered from our law department. And I'm going to recognize Barbara Schellenberg, our town attorney, please. No time, sorry, Dan.
Item number 19, resolved that the sum of $275,000 be and the same is hereby appropriated to be added to account number A140 51400 professional services attorneys.
Thank you. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Item 19 has been moved and seconded and is now before us. May we have the reports of the committees that considered this item, please? I believe it's oh, no, you may go. Very eager. Pole position, Mr. Brooks Harris for Finance.
Thank you. Finance took up this motion and we got a brief explanation of why the additional funds were needed. Basically, there are many vacancies in the department. We have to hire outside counsel to do some of that work, and that's more expensive. Second, the town attorney talked about some of the litigation that's taking place, and it's very expensive, and so that has to be funded. Wasn't originally contemplated in the budget. Some members of finance were disappointed by some of the legislation brought against the town and asked if the town could possibly recoup some money by a claim of vexatious litigation against one particular person who seemed to be taking up a lot of resources. But the town attorney said that the standard to achieve a victory in vexatious litigation was probably higher than was achievable. So we basically need this money. Finance voted on this and approved the new funds, 1100. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kip Bergweger with the report of the Legislative and Rules Committee, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. At our meeting, Barbara Schellenberg, the town attorney, presented this matter, and we were helped by Karen Fassiliotis of the BET. Much of the request for this appropriation was driven by the unexpected retirement of one assistant town attorney and extended leave of another, which ultimately led to retirement. These personnel issues required higher usage of external counsel than expected, as the retiring attorneys could not be assigned lengthy litigation responsibilities. In addition, the Greenwich Public Schools inquiry was an expenditure not anticipated when the budget was set last year, which will likely run into $300,000 or more before completion. Glenn Canner, District 12, expressed concern that the law department's budget was increasing rapidly and not conforming to the 2% limit required of town departments. Mr. Canner passed out budget numbers that he had run for the law department over the past 15 plus years. He calculated the law department budget last year went over $3 million for the first time, which should be a cause for concern. Ms. Schellenberg replied that under Wayne Fox in the 2017-2018 budget, and 2018 budget years, the budget exceeded $3 million. But Mr. Canner disagreed with this assertion. Mr. Canner noted several other budget items that concerned him. Mr. Canner had viewed the law department as a 5-person law firm. He asserted that the budget has been kept within the 2% increase range required by the town. Again, Ms. Schellenberg disagreed. Further, Mr. Canner stated that the prosecution of law has actually become cheaper, not more expensive, and he could not understand why expenses were rising. Ms. Schellenberg explained that rather than getting cheaper, rates have gone up for lawyers, making everything more expensive. She reiterated that this is the first year we've had 2 long-term attorneys out for an extended period, which required significant additional personnel expenditures for all outside counsel. Karen Fassiliotis noted that the law department is subject to contractual obligations with unions. Furthermore, deductibles are significantly higher now than when Wayne Fox was the town attorney. In fact, deductibles are up more than 100% from $1.5 million to $3.5 million. The town is spending more to get our deductibles on claims. Finally, she pointed out that the independent school investigation should have been charged to the Board of Education and not to the law department. Both Ms. Fassiliotis and Ms. Schellenberg were clear that the cost of litigation for the town have gone up, not down, increasing both in complexity and cost. The committee had voted on amending the proposal, but the town attorney has taken care of that. We then went on to vote on item 19 as amended. The resolution passed 12-0 on legal order and 10-0 on the merits, with districts 1 and 12 voting no. District 12 voted no because he's concerned about rapidly increasing law department costs. District 1 voted no based on his objection to the law department's request pertaining to the Boland investigation, which is not being well handled. District 1 did note that he did not agree with Mr. Cantor's contention that the law department's expenses were too high. Instead, he made the opposite point, that the department's budget of the last dozen years has gone up less than the town's overall budget. Following the meeting, we have learned that during the 2017-2018 budget year, the law department received 2 additional appropriations totaling $750,000 for additional outside legal services and $15,000 for additional office supplies.
I believe that concludes our committee reports. I'm happy to report that no one has signed up to debate this issue. So I believe we can proceed right to the vote. Craig, it should say like item 19, $275,000, yep, appropriation. So if you're in favor of this appropriation of $275,000, you would vote yes. If you are opposed, you would vote no. Craig, could you please start the timer? Open it up. You'll have 2 minutes. We still have one item after this, which is the contract. So we do need to have at least 77 people present and accounted for.
It's still open and they're turning clickers in.
And it's an open vote, so please don't return your clicker while the vote is open. You can just wait 1 minute and 9 seconds. Ms. Jansen? Are you voting for this item? I don't see your name lit up. Okay.
You worked. You went through now.
Okay.
I've been pressing 3 times.
Okay. Has everyone voted that wants to vote? Okay. Okay. Craig, could you please close the vote? Okay, I have the result on item 19, which is the appropriation to the law department of $275,000. Those in favor, 150, opposed 7, abstaining 5. That item has carried. That brings us to our final vote of our final item of the evening, which is the Liuna contract. And I believe Jonathan Budd, if he is still, there you are, you stayed strong through the entire night, will be reading the resolution.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Board of Education, resolved that the representative town meeting of the town of Greenwich hereby rejects the one-year contract extension covering fiscal year 2024 between the Board of Education and Local 136 of Laborers International Union of North America, AFL-CIO, Liuna.
Thank you. May a member please move the adoption of the resolution? The resolution has been moved and seconded. It is now before us. May we have the reports of the committees that considered this item, beginning with Richard Newman, Chair of our Town Services Committee.
Town Services did question why a BOE contract was before Town Services, but we took up the item with Mike Mason and Board of Ed HR Director Jonathan Budd. We found it interesting that this contract was not sent to the RTM for discussion in the past. This is a request to extend the contract 1 year to allow for the town to spread out negotiations. We did not go into depth with the numbers, knowing that our other committees would. Our vote to reject this was 0-9-1. That means 0 is in favor of rejecting, 9 was against rejecting, 1 was not sure.
Thank you very much. Mr. Spilo with the report of our Labor Contracts Committee.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Labor contracts met on June 7th with Dr. Budd from the GPS administration and Michael Mason, town labor negotiator. Dr. Budd presented the one-year extension for the Board of Ed Liuna employees, a bargaining unit which consists of 10 high school security personnel, 174 teachers' aides, 8 of whom are on some kind of leave of absence. As presented by Dr. Budd, the one-year contract extension included a 2.3% GWI, but unlike the Teamster contract extension, which had no steps, BOE Liuna employees have step increases as high as 5.8%. As a result, Dr. Budd indicated that he expects the total salary increases would amount to 5.18%, well above those of the other unions. LCC had previously requested a census on the Board of Education Liuna employees, and our calculations roughly matched the information provided by the Board of Ed. But LCC data did not include the step information, and so there was insufficient time to obtain it. LCC data did indicate that overtime amounted to roughly 10% of pay. Our total pay, including overtime, roughly matched Dr. Budd's total, so we didn't cover overtime. We also didn't discuss stipends, but these would remain flat. Healthcare copay for BOE Liuna is well below other bargaining units. Healthcare costs have escalated and are expected to rise another 9 to 10% in the coming year. In this instance, town healthcare benefits costs can exceed the total compensation for some of the Liuna employees. As a result, Dr. Budd indicated that benefits are expected to increase a total of 10%. No information was provided regarding retirement benefits. The overall cost of the contract is expected to increase by 15% over the 1 year, or about 1.5 million, which is an additional cost of $8,500 per employee on average. This is higher than the other one-year extensions entered into the town. We were told that the BOE had voted on the extension in December, and that the cost of this extension was already included in the current budget we voted on last month. We were told that should the RTM vote to reject this extension, the result would be that the Board of Ed would need to start immediately to negotiate a new contract with the union. Despite the lack of clarity on the cost of the contract and the relatively high per employee cost for this group, increase for this group, the LCC felt that potential benefits of rejecting this agreement were minimal, and we voted 0-5-0 not to reject.
Thank you. Kimberly Blank looks like she's moving to the Kimberly Blank, Chair of the Education Committee.
Hi, your Education Committee met on Monday, June 5th to consider item 20. Dr. Jonathan Budd, Chief of Human Resources for the Board of Ed, presented this item to us, along with Mike Mason, Head of Labor Relations for the town, and Joe Kelly, Chair of the Board of Ed. This is a one-year contract extension with a GWI of 2.3%. All other aspects of the contract will remain the same for next year. This union has received a 2.0% annual GWI since 2019. The 2.3% agreed to in this extension is above that and was chosen as the average of mediated settlements across the state in the 30 months preceding the agreement. It mirrors the GWI agreed to by the town for other one-year extensions. Mr. Mason explains that given the current inflationary environment, the town is trying to negotiate short-term extensions of existing contracts. Dr. Budd said that the Board of Ed approved this contract extension in December with a vote of 7-0-1. Historically, the Board of Ed has not brought this contract to the RTM, so it did not do so at the time of its approval. Going forward, the Board of Ed will bring all labor contracts in front of the RTM. Dr. Budd presented estimated costs of contract. He said these estimates were conservative because they assume no change in the current census for step increases, which is historically unlikely. They estimate that the one-year extension will cost an additional $293,000 in wages and an additional $581,000 in benefit costs. Because the contract was approved in December, these increases have already been included in next year's budget. Dr. Budd explained that the paraprofessionals covered here primarily work in one-to-one settings with students with special needs. The town is obligated to provide these personnel to students based on their IEPs, and there is not a lot of flexibility for the Board of Ed in deciding how many paras to hire, since most of them are mandated. He also explained that the town pays a relatively higher share of healthcare costs for this union than for other unions because of the generally lower salaries for these employees. Board of Ed LiUNA members pay a 13% contribution towards their health insurance costs. We asked Dr. Budd about what goals they have for the longer-term contract negotiation. In addition to achieving favorable GWI and benefit contribution agreements, the Board of Ed would like more flexibility to reassign personnel according to changing student needs throughout the year. They would also like to clarify time and attendance requirements for this group. We voted 0-12-0 not to reject this contract, enabling the one-year extension to go into effect.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks Harris, Chair of our Finance Committee, to be followed by Ms. Jansen, Chair of our BOC Committee.
Thank you. Jonathan Budd also presented to us, as well as Mike Mason, and the numbers he discussed with us were similar, but didn't sound exactly the same as the ones that Labor Contract Committee indicated. Mr. Budd told us that the 2.3% annual wage increase could lead to an increase in the cost of contract to as much as 5.2%, assuming everybody employed got a step increase, which was an overly conservative assumption. So the actual increase in cost of contract should be less than that, based on what he told us. Mike Mason made a couple points as to why it made sense to take this extension up at this time. First, he mentioned that we're currently negotiating with GMEA and fire contracts, and as we've discussed in previous contracts, we don't want to negotiate them all at the same time. In addition, the town LiUNA contract has already been extended, so negotiating both LiUNA contracts at the same time makes sense, so extending this out, and the cost, as previously discussed, was reasonable. Members of Finance were reminded that based on our charter, if we don't like this contract, we must reject it. The contract automatically goes into effect if we have not rejected it. As a result, the language of item 20 is to reject the contract extension, and if members want the contract extension to go into effect, they must vote against this rejection. Members had little trouble with this concept, as double negative logic was viewed as consistent with the normal government operation. Finance rejected this 0-11-0 with one absent. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Lucia Jansen, Chair of the BOC.
The BOC had Dr. Jonathan Budd as well, Chief Human Resources Officer, and Michael Mason, the town labor negotiator, to the BOC. Dr. Budd distributed a handout with Blaise Levitin, Chief Operating Officer, to address our request for a cost of contract, as well as a series of questions regarding the new Board of Ed LiUNA one-year extension. Dr. Budd noted the reason for the 6-month delay in bringing forward the extension to the RTM was that the Board of Ed had previously bypassed the RTM approval for the 2019-2023 contract, since MIRA Connecticut state law can be interpreted as not needing local legislative RTM approval. Dr. Budd, however, announced a new Board of Ed practice where the Board of Ed will present seamlessly and timely new labor union agreements to the RTM immediately after the Board of Ed vote. This new practice was significant news for the BOC to hear and brought a lot of goodwill and appreciation by members. Since there was limited data provided in the explanos, the BOC chair had conducted a limited comparison benchmarking employee co-share of healthcare premium costs. The BOC research results were consistent with the previous benchmark conducted 3 years ago by Shipman and Goodwin, showing Greenwich paraprofessionals and security guards contributing one of the least amount among the peer groups. Given the high inflation environment, Dr. Budd also shared the Board of Ed and the town were pleased with the outcome to limit the renewal agreement to 1 year, as had been achieved with other town contracts, particularly the larger LiUNA Town Bargaining Unit contract, along with a 2.3% general wage increase, not including steps. No other changes to the previous agreement were made from the 2019-2023. Thus, the BOC discussed three major positive points of the outcome. One, the announcement that all future Board of Ed contracts will be timely and seamlessly shared to the RTM for a vote. The Board of Ed town contract goals were met with a 1-year term agreement. And three, the 2.3% GWI would pattern the other town and Board of Ed 1-year term of contracts. The BOC vote was 0-12-0 to reject the contract, which enables the contract to take effect and pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, once again, I'm delighted to say no one has signed up to speak on this item, so we will move straight to the vote, okay? Just remember this resolution is worded to reject. So if you are in favor of rejecting the contract, if you reject it, it would go to arbitration, you would vote yes. If you do not want to reject the contract and accept it, you would vote no. Okay, everyone understands it's worded to reject. So item 20 is a motion to reject the FY24 LiUNA contract. If you want to reject it, you vote yes. If you do not want to reject it, you would vote no. Craig, can you please open up the vote? You have 2 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. It would go to standard negotiation, not arbitration in this case. I've been informed. Thank you.
No.
Hang on. Hang on. Let's just see what's happening. Wait. Let's just see. What? Hang on.
Oh.
Okay. So I'll wait.
Oh, sorry, it was wrong. He's fixing it.
It is wrong. Okay. It's fine. Mine does not show no.
We're gonna work on it.
Okay.
Hang on.
Yeah.
My microphone's not on. We're going to turn off this vote because we think that the little wire might not have been fully connected. We don't know. We'll find out. Okay, so we're going to stop it and we're going to close it and restart it. Yes, we will just open it up again and I'll prompt them online, and if they're listening, they'll hear it, okay? But let me make sure that Craig has it disconnected. He's just, I think, we're just turning this thing off, I think. So can you find those people online? Are those people online? Does their vote count? Can you see what they voted? You can see how they voted. So then, why don't we do a paper ballot? We're gonna have to do it, otherwise we can't. Okay, so let's get her down here. Kim, it's gonna take a minute. It's all down there. We're gonna do a paper ballot for the voters, for everybody. So we need 12 ballots.
All right, it just.
Wait. Should I go help them put it in her?
Someone out there.
Hit a clicker.
Hit a
Someone
clicker.
vote.
See if it clicks on. We've tried.
Somebody
turning it back
vote.
on.
Is it coming up?
Okay.
Wait. Try now?
Okay. Try now.
Okay. Yeah, Alexa, just say it on mine. On mine people.
So for our, did the people online stay?
It all.
Okay, so if the people online, we just had to reboot, and now it seems to be working here. If you're online and you voted, we've opened up the vote again, we cleared you out. And if you just refresh your browser, and if you want to vote, I appreciate everybody's patience with this. Please don't turn in your clicker while the vote is open. It's already a very sensitive and temperamental system this evening, so let's just leave it right there.
Yep, you voted. Okay. Did I show up on the, just over? Did I show up on the last one? You voted on the last one. Okay. Wait, which one? The one that didn't show up.
This is our final vote for the evening. So once we have the results, we will adjourn, but I do wish you a very happy summer. I hope that we do, while I love seeing you, I hope that we won't be seeing one another until September without a special meeting, but we'll find out.
So you ever try? No, you were trying to this side. Sorry, our 7. Just put everybody up. It's too much. I'm not.
That means that it's not over.
Okay.
Oh. Okay. You have about 20 seconds. Could you please close the vote, Craig? Okay, the vote on item 20, those in favor, 7, opposed 137, abstaining 7, that motion has failed. So we have successfully managed to reject. Have a great summer, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in September. Thank you for everything.